Hello, my name is Reed Silverne, and the name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker, and I'm proud of it. The content of this show hasn't been cleared by my agency or any other agency. No public affairs officer has approved what I'm about to say. In fact, even I don't know what I'm about to say. Today I'm going to talk about a number of different things, but the first thing I want to talk about is the situation with the Bosnia plane. A lot of good people died in that incident, and I'd like to honor them and honor their memory. Of course, everybody knows that the Secretary of Commerce, Ron Brown, good friend of the President, one of the people responsible for the President's election, was on the plane and was killed in that crash. A few people realize that there were 12 federal workers also on that plane and 6 military people. And I'd like to mention their names. I'm sure that somewhere their names are being mentioned and that their lives and their heroism has been honored. But I'm going to do it anyway again. Dwayne Christian was the security officer. Adam Darling is a confidential assistant. Carol Hamilton was a press secretary. Catherine Hoffman, senior advisor, and Steve Kaminsky was counselor for the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. Kathy Kellogg was assistant in the Office of Business Liaison for the Commerce Department. Chuck Meissner was assistant secretary of International Trade. Bill Morton was Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Economic Development. Gail Dobert was Deputy Director of the Office of Business Liaison. Lawrence Payne, Special Assistant for the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service. Naomi Warbass was an International Trade Specialist with the Commerce Department. Jim Lewick was an analyst for the CIA, and Lee Jackson was with the Treasury Department. I may have left one or two names out, but I don't believe so. I think all of these people deserve our memory and deserve our pride. I believe that they died on a mission for their country, and people may or may not agree with the mission in Bosnia. They may or may not agree with the Dayton Peace Accords and what's occurred. I think there's a lot of politics one way or the other, but I don't think anybody can deny that those people were asked by their government and their country to do a task and to do a deed, and they did it, and they were killed while doing it and while undergoing it. And I believe that that's an important thing, and that their relatives and their families have a lot to be proud of, and of course they're going to miss these people quite a bit. Also, I'd like to honor 6 members of the crew who were with the Air Force. Captain Ashley Davis, Captain Tim Schaefer, Staff Sergeant Gerald Aldrich was the flight mechanic, Staff Sergeant Robert Farrington, the steward, Tech Sergeant Shelley Kelly, and Tech Sergeant Cheryl Turnage, and they were both stewards on the plane. And I think that those people deserve a lot of credit. It's really a terrible tragedy that their plane went into the side of a mountain. It seems like there was a problem with the avionics. Visibility was about 100 feet, which of course in the air is absolutely nothing. There seems to have been a problem with the radio beacons. They had basically a 1930s or 40s system where 2 beacons put out radio signals, and the plane was supposed to go to the left of one of the signals and to the right of the other signal, brings them right into the airport. Well, apparently one of the signals was gone, but the plane thought that the left signal was really the right left signal was really the right one. Instead of going to the right of it, they went to the left of it and ended up in a mountain. Perhaps they shouldn't have tried to land that day. It's hard to say. It's easy to second guess a situation after it's occurred. But the people on that plane were out there. They were trying to do something for their country, and they died in the process. President of the United States basically said it all, and I'd be happy to repeat some of his remarks after this had happened. He said, "These 33 lives show us the best in America. They are a stern rebuke to the cynicism that is all too familiar today. For as family after family told Vice President Hillary and me today, their loved ones were proud of what they were doing, they believed in what they were doing, and they believed in this country, and they believed we could make a difference." I'll skip a little bit, but he basically says nearly 5,000 miles from home, they went to help people build their own homes and roads, to turn on the lights in cities darkened by war, to restore everyday interchange of people working and living together with something to look forward to and to dream, to raise their own children by. And they said they were all patriots. And I think that patriot is a word in this day and age, and with all the situations that have been going on, that's been ill-used. And I'm talking about the Freemen out in Montana and a lot of these different so-called patriot militias and patriot groups. And in my opinion, these people who spurn and their government and their country and the laws that are passed by the president who's elected by the people and by the Congress that it's elected by the people, they believe that these laws don't apply to them. And many of them dump their citizenship and don't believe in America enough to remain a citizen, and they still call themselves patriots. And in my opinion, a patriot is somebody who does something for his country and not against his country. And I believe that these people that were killed in the duty, in the line of duty, and all the people out there just doing their duty, and federal workers out there quietly doing their job, enforcing the laws that were passed by the president who was elected by the people, by the Congress who was elected by the people, following basically the Constitution, which says that is how laws are passed. They're not passed and enforced by self-styled people's courts or common law courts that are decreed by individuals and by little cults and groups. They have to go through the system that was set up in the Constitution that's still in effect over 200 years after the Constitution was ratified. And I believe that that's what we're really trying to do over here, and that is what a patriot is all about. There's soldiers out there in Bosnia and Haiti, in Rwanda and Germany, and in South Korea, where the North Koreans have just infiltrated basically the DMZ in violation of a pact that was done over 43 years ago. All the hot spots and all the non-hot spots throughout the Americas and the entire world, they're out there doing their job and trying to maintain the peace of this world and the strength and the freedom of the United States. And we have a lot of freedom. And the proof is we've changed regimes. We actually voted out a sitting president who had won a magnificent war just a year before. George Bush ran for president, and the people spoke, and he is not our president. Somebody else is. And the Democratic Congress that's been sitting there in the House for 40 years under the control of the same people, supposedly with all the powers of the incumbency and all the powers that are abusable and all the money that can be provided to them by PACs, and they're not there anymore. They're not in charge anymore. They switched parties, and now the Speaker of the House is not a Democrat, but a Republican. And of course, that could be just the opposite, because the Constitution works, and because the American people have the last word and really can change things. And so we see a bunch of people over there who say, I'm a patriot, and we're a patriotic militia. And I don't believe in the laws that's passed by Congress. They don't apply to me. I'm too good for it. I don't have anything but deepest contempt for these people who call themselves patriots. And I really feel sad that the media and the news and all the other people repeat their own mantra about themselves. This is a patriotic militia group. This is a patriotic group. Patriots said this. Patriots said that. When they're talking about these groups that don't accept the authority of a government that's been elected by the people. And I think that they shouldn't say that. Personally, I feel they should say self-styled patriots. People who call themselves patriots. They should call themselves so-called patriots. And that's what I feel that they should call them. And reserve the word patriot and leave it in its real term for the people who are helping their country, for the Scott O'Grady's who got shot down over Bosnia and managed to get his signal out and got rescued and came back and was humble about it and said, oh, I want to credit the people who saved me because they're the real heroes over here, and wouldn't even call himself a hero. And for all the quiet people that are neither federal workers nor military nor anything else, they just sit there, they vote, they play by the rules, they pay their taxes, and they do what's necessary. And they are helping this country and are patriots and are doing their patriotic duty. And I feel that they should be called patriots and that they should get that honor and that term of honor. And that people who abuse and pass bad checks and abuse their neighbors and all the terrible things that have been done in the name of patriotism by these groups in the last couple of years, I don't feel that people who are not them should grant them this honor of calling them patriots. And that's basically my position on that. And I really feel that the quiet patriots are the good citizens of this country who do their job and vote. And if they don't like what's going on and they don't like their government, they vote it out. And those people had the power in 1992 to vote out President Bush. And those people have the power to vote out President Clinton if they decide they don't like what he's doing. And those people have the power to vote out Newt Gingrich if they don't like what he's doing, just as they had the power to vote out the Democrats in 1994, and they did. And we've had revolution after revolution and quiet revolutions the way the Constitution intended because we've allowed the people to speak and to do what they really felt was necessary. And sometimes they'll vote in a president, and sometimes they'll vote him back in, and they'll keep a president, and sometimes they won't. It's completely up to them. And that's the way it should be. And if people vote for a set of supervisors that have authority over a county, a gang of militiamen come in, they want to vote and have an equal vote with the supervisors. Well, they had the perfect right to run for supervisor. Just because nobody will vote for them because they're off there, off on right field, doesn't mean that they have the right to vote as a supervisor, because they don't. And if they don't accept that system, well, that's tough. And that's basically my position on that. Now, I've been talking a lot about downsizing, and I've been talking a lot about CEOs' salaries, and people might think, oh, geez, he's anti-business. Well, I'd like to say something positive, and I'd like to honor the businessmen who went along on that trip and who was asked by the President of the United States and by the Secretary of Commerce to do what they can to rebuild Bosnia and to think about investing in that country. And I think those people deserve to be honored. And I'm not saying that any of them are overpaid or overpriced. And in fact, I don't really know how well many of these people were paid. And I'm not going to criticize that. Barry Conrad was head of the Barrington Group. Paul Cushman III is head of Chief Executive of Riggs International Banking Corporation. There are bankers going along on this. President and Chief Executive of ABB, Swiss Engineering Company, was out there. Chairman and Chief Executive of the Air and Water Technologies, trying to help the environment in a war-torn and destroyed country. David Ford, President and Chief of Interguard, glass-making company. President of a natural gas company, Ensearch International. There are a number of energy companies involved there. I don't know if there's natural gas or what kind of natural resource they have in the ex-Yugoslavia. I believe there is natural gas there. The Senior Vice President of ATT, Submarine Division, was there. And the Chairman and Chief Executive of Parsons Company in Pasadena. I'm familiar with that company, and they're a big aerospace builder. They've built a lot of bases and facilities in Saudi Arabia, for instance. The Chairman and Chief Executive of Foster Wheeler Energy International Company, Clifton, New Jersey. President of Bechtel, was there. And Bechtel and Parsons are competitors usually who bid against each other for big giant engineering jobs, pipelines, natural gas, army bases, all kinds of very, very big projects. The founding president of a nonprofit home builder, Bridge Housing, who owns 6,000 affordable housing units, he was killed in this effort. And John Scoville, the chairman of Harza Engineering Company, an employee-owned company. And these people were out there, and they were doing their duty, and nobody forced them. They volunteered, and they're now dead. And that's too bad. And I feel very badly for them and for their families, because they were doing the right thing. Back on the subject of downsizing, I've had people come to me and say, what does Fed pride have to do with downsizing? Well, it does have a lot to do with politics, and politics have a lot to do with federal government. And it is the private end of it. And there was a wonderful article, I've been on the subject of downsizing for a while, about Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo took over Interstate, and they're slashing 7,000 jobs, closing a lot of branches in various areas in the western United States. And there's a tactic called corporate judo, where a company will use downsizing against their competitor when their competitor downsizes and destroys the morale of their organization. And another bank called Glendale Federal is sent spies into First Interstate to find out who their prospective customers are and if they want to jump. They're trying to get information about what services the customers want. They have ads that make fun of Wells Fargo about their high fees. They're trying to raid the people, not the people so much that have left, but the ones that are staying, to see if they want to leave and come to this company. And they even have an 800 number that ends with Fed Up. So corporate judo does very well, and they're using it against a lot of these companies that have just downsized, and they're bringing over the best employees and rating them for information, for markets, and for everything else. So downsizing for its own sake doesn't really help anybody. Certainly doesn't make their company that much more efficient. It saves costs, but if you lose markets and if you lose customers, then what good is saving costs? Because a lot of times you end up with destroyed morale, employees who really don't care, and employees who aren't very nice to the customers. They don't really have much of a reason to, because so many heads have rolled and they feel their heads are going to roll next. And that just happens. So it's very interesting that there is an alternative to that, and that other companies are rating and rating the customers and rating the employees of these companies that are downsizing so cruelly. The next thing I'm going to discuss is a proposal that's circulating around both the White House, or apparently the House, and that's for a new retirement system, a new federal retirement system. And I'm referring to the Federal Employees News Digest, which is a wonderful magazine that deals with federal issues, and it really comes down and knows a lot of things that's going on before pretty much anybody else. And this is a particularly interesting thing. And there's a new system that is being discussed. It hasn't even been brought forward as a bill that this particular magazine calls FERS 2. That doesn't mean that it's going to be called FERS 2. And similar to the FERS program, it would apply to all new employees that come in after 1997. And right now we have CSRS, which is an old-style retirement system with a defined benefit, not a defined contribution. And basically the employee puts in his 7%, and that may very well go up to 7.5%, and the agency matches that, and it builds into a trust fund, and that's basically the trust fund that kept the country from going over the debt ceiling for so long during the debt crisis. And When you retire at 30 years, you get 2% per year of salary, a little bit less than that because in the lower years you don't get full credit. And if you do 30 years and you're 55, you retire at about 56% of salary. And of course, take home to take home, that might even be a little bit better than that because there's a lot of money taken out of your salary. If you're a federal worker, you would know that. And of course, your taxes are lower. Then there's the FERS program. The FERS program came in because they realized that the unfunded liability in the original program called CSRS was very, very, very high, and that the employees were getting older and older, so that there were going to be more and more retirees, and that this may in the future be a burden to the taxpayer, and they just didn't want to pay that much. And they were cutting entitlements back during the Reagan administration. So they set up FERS. And it also was a benefit to the revamped Social Security system because it took all the new federal employees that came in during the 80s and afterward and put them on the Social Security system. And then they had a second tier, which is the retirement system, and the retirement system only paid 1% per year. It was much less generous, and when you total it up, you really see that. And you had to retire at a slightly later age with the FERS system. You didn't get full retirement, I believe, until 59 and a half instead of 55, but you could retire at 55. And then there was a bridge for your Social Security payments that would come out of your retirement. And then there was a third tier, which is very, very popular, and that's what we call a defined contribution system. And in that, the government would put up a percent, and then the person could put up to 10% out of his own pay. And the government would put higher and higher matching until you hit 5% of the employee's pay, then the government would match it with a full 5%. Or I believe that's true. And then the employee could come in with yet another 5%, and the employee could put in a total of 10%, with the government putting a total of 5%, and that could grow very, very quickly. And they added the ability to invest in a stock fund called the C fund, in government securities, which is the original and main style, which is called the G fund, and in bonds, which was called an F fund. Now we're talking about FERS 2. And what FERS 2 would do, it would wipe out the government contribution for FERS, for the TSP. And it would still have Social Security with FERS 2. And then it would have TSP type account. And then there would be an employer-funded hybrid, in which case the government would put in whatever it needed to, but the total yield would be 5%. So if they could put in 2% to create 5%, they'd only have to put in 2%. But the total amount of the percentage per year would only be 5% return. And of course, that's not nearly as good as getting your match into the FERS, into your TSP, your Thrift Savings Plan, which is a full real 5%, and can of course return much higher, because if you put that money into the C fund last year, you could have made an extra 30%. So the 5% that the government put in could total of 8% instead of only 5%. 8% of salary, actually, which is pretty darn good. So really doesn't look like this is a very good system, and you can withdraw it, and it is portable, and you can lump sum your money out, which I guess is a plus, but there's no real retirement in it that I can see. That second tier that is in there. And of course, retirement is a retirement plan. If you make it a complete defined contribution, you don't end up getting as much as you otherwise would have. And so I don't feel that this is a very good system, and I don't know how far it's going to go, because at this point it's just a proposal. It's not even a bill. And we'll see what happens with this particular program. They call it FERS 2. If it actually comes out in a bill, we'll be happy to talk about it. My name is Reed Silverne, and the name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm proud to be a federal worker. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.